Does suffering really make us stronger, or is that something people say after the damage is done? When pain enters a family, someone usually tries to give it a purpose. Maybe this happened for a reason. Maybe it will make us closer. Maybe one day we will be grateful for what it taught us. Sometimes those words bring comfort. Sometimes they ask a wounded person to perform wisdom before they have even been allowed to grieve. Daniel Mercer had discovered Viktor Frankl's idea that life can remain meaningful under suffering. He thought that meant he should turn his father's illness into something valuable. So he bought cameras. He made interview lists. He designed a family archive called the Arthur Project. And on a Sunday afternoon in the workshop, while the camera was still recording, Arthur forgot Sophie's name. What Daniel did in the next 30 seconds would make his daughter leave the room in tears. Hi, I'm Sarah, and this is Wise Mind Stories. In this episode, we are going to separate one of the most powerful ideas in man's search for meaning from one of its most dangerous misreadings. Suffering can carry meaning, but suffering is not required, and pain does not become good simply because we learn from it. You will also get one practical framework for deciding when to change a situation and when to choose a stance toward what cannot be changed. The first recording went well. Arthur showed Sophie how to test the grain of a piece of cedar with the side of her thumb. He told her that good woodworkers do not force material to become something it is not. You work with the grain, he said, or the wood remembers the fight. Daniel loved the sentence. He clipped it from the recording and sent it to Elena. He ordered a better microphone. The next Sunday, he arrived with printed questions. How did Arthur meet Daniel's mother? What was his first job? What did he want Sophie to remember about courage? Arthur answered 2 questions, then asked why they were doing an interview instead of building the boat. So we don't lose anything, Daniel said. Arthur looked at him for a long moment. You're going to lose things. Daniel adjusted the camera. That's why we're recording. By the 3rd week, the project had a cloud folder, a naming system, and a production schedule. Elena found Daniel at the kitchen table after midnight, labeling audio files. You missed dinner again. I was editing Dad's story about the old fairy. He called me tonight. Daniel kept typing. What did he need? He wanted to know why you keep asking him questions he can't answer. Daniel stopped. This matters. I know it matters. Elena lowered her voice. But does it matter to him? Or does it help you feel like you're winning? That question made him angry because it reached the part of the project he had hidden from himself. If he could preserve enough stories, then perhaps the illness would not be taking Arthur away. It would be producing a legacy. The loss would become an achievement. We often search for a lesson because a lesson feels easier to control than grief. Frankl is frequently summarized as saying that suffering gives life meaning. His position was more careful. Meaning can be found despite suffering and, when suffering is truly unavoidable, through the stance a person takes toward it. But if suffering can be removed, the meaningful act is to remove it. To preserve avoidable pain in the name of personal growth would not be courage. It would be a misuse of the idea. This distinction protects Frankl's work from becoming a command to endure abuse, neglect treatment, tolerate injustice, or remain in preventable misery. Logotherapy does not ask, how can I make every pain noble? It asks 2 different questions. Can this situation be changed? And if it truly cannot, what human possibility remains in how I meet it? Daniel was mixing those questions together. Arthur's medical support, safety, and dignity required concrete change. The progression of the illness was not something Daniel could negotiate away. Instead of respecting that boundary, he was trying to defeat the uncontrollable part by controlling everyone's response to it. On the 4th Sunday, Sophie sat beside Arthur at the workbench. The wooden boat was beginning to take shape. Daniel turned on the camera. Dad, show Sophie how you mark the center line. Arthur picked up a pencil. He looked at the boat, then at Sophie. And you are? The room became completely still. Sophie's face changed first. Not dramatically, just a small withdrawal behind the eyes. It's me, Grandpa. Arthur smiled, trying to cover his fear. Of course, but he did not say her name. Daniel moved closer. Dad, this is Sophie. Arthur nodded. Daniel glanced at the camera. The red light was still on. Can you say it? Elena, standing in the doorway, whispered, Daniel. He ignored her. Dad, say Sophie. Arthur stared down at the pencil. Sophie stood so quickly that the stool fell backward. Turn it off. Daniel reached toward her. Soph, turn it off. She ran out of the workshop. Daniel stopped the recording. Arthur's shoulders had folded inward. Did I do something wrong? He asked. Daniel had thought the camera was preserving his father. In that moment, it had preserved his humiliation. The cost of Daniel's search for meaning was no longer abstract. He had asked a frightened old man to prove his memory, and a frightened child to turn heartbreak into family history. Pain does not owe us an inspiring story. Frankl's own testimony never treats the camps as good because insight emerged from them. The brutality remains brutality. The losses remain irreparable. His claim is about the human person, not the moral value of the suffering. Even when conditions attack freedom from every direction, there may remain a final inner possibility. The possibility of taking a position toward what is happening. This freedom is never unlimited. It does not mean a prisoner controls the camp, a patient controls disease, or a grieving person controls the fact of death. It means conditions do not automatically dictate the full moral meaning of a person's response. Frankl later described this human capacity through what he called the tragic triad: pain, guilt, and death. Pain confronts us with what hurts. Guilt confronts us with what we have done. Death confronts us with what cannot remain. Tragic optimism is not cheerfulness about these realities. It is the refusal to conclude that pain makes growth impossible, guilt makes change impossible, or death makes life meaningless. Daniel could not choose Arthur's illness. But guilt had now entered the room too. He had hurt Sophie. He could defend his intentions or let guilt become a reason to change. That night, he sat outside Sophie's bedroom. Can I come in? No answer. He opened the door a few inches. Sophie was lying beneath the paper model of Saturn that hung from her ceiling. I'm sorry. She faced the wall. I thought the videos would help us remember him. He's not gone. Daniel felt the sentence strike exactly where it needed to. I know. Then why do you act like everything he does is for later? There was the reversal. Daniel had believed he was protecting Arthur from disappearing. In reality, his obsession with preserving the future was preventing him from meeting his father in the present. He sat on the floor. You were right to tell me to turn it off. Sophie finally looked at him. Is he going to forget me? Daniel's instinct was to reassure her. Nothing has to change. We caught it early. He let the false promise pass. Maybe, he said. And if that happens, it will hurt. But you will still know who he is, and we will help him feel safe, even when he can't remember why. Sophie began to cry. Daniel did not offer a lesson. He sat beside her and cried too. Frankl illustrates the meaning of an unavoidable burden through a brief clinical encounter with an older physician who could not overcome the death of his wife. Rather than telling the man to move on, Frankl asked him to imagine the reverse. What if the physician had died first, and his wife had been left to endure this grief? The man understood that his own survival had spared the person he loved from carrying the pain he now carried. The grief did not become pleasant. His wife's death did not become good. but the suffering took on a possible meaning. He was bearing, through love, a burden she did not have to bear. The situation could not be changed. His relationship to it could. This is what Frankl called an attitudinal value, the meaning realized through the position we take toward an unavoidable fate. It is not a demand that every sufferer discover a beautiful interpretation on schedule. Meaning cannot be prescribed from outside like medicine. The person living the pain must remain free to find the response that is honest for them. Meaning does not cancel grief. It gives grief somewhere human to stand. The following Sunday, Daniel returned to the workshop with no tripod. Arthur was sanding the hull of the boat in short, uneven strokes. "No movie today?" Arthur asked. "No movie." Run out of questions? Daniel sat beside him. "I think I was asking too many." Sophie entered carrying 3 cups of hot chocolate. Arthur looked at her. Daniel held his breath. "You're the one who likes too many marshmallows," Arthur said. Sophie smiled. "That's me." He did not remember her name. She did not make him prove that he did. They spent the afternoon sanding with the grain. Nothing was cured. Something was repaired. Here is the practice for this episode. Take one painful situation and divide a page in 2. On the left, write, "What can still be changed?" On the right, write, "What cannot be changed today?" Choose one action from the left. Make the appointment, set the boundary, ask for help, tell the truth. Then choose one stance toward the right. Patience, honesty, courage, tenderness. Not because pain is good, because your response is still yours. This is Sarah, and this is Wise Mind Stories. You do not have to call your suffering a gift. You do not have to be grateful for what should never have happened. But when pain cannot be removed, you may still be able to decide what kind of person will meet it. If you want stories that make difficult ideas honest and usable, subscribe to Wise Mind Stories. After the workshop, Elena asked Daniel to walk with her to the harbor. She told him she was glad he had turned off the camera. Then she said something he was not prepared to hear. "I don't think you see me anymore." Daniel had been so focused on losing his father that he had not noticed what else was disappearing. And the next question would not be about how to endure pain. It would be about why the people we love can become invisible while we are working so hard to save them. Next episode teaser. Daniel finally stops using meaning to escape grief. But Elena reveals the cost of his long absence. He has managed the family's crises while failing to see the people living inside them. Can love survive when care becomes nothing but logistics?